All right, to take on this next section, we must tread carefully. I don't think we really handled this passage in the past well, possibly even used it abusively. So let's tread very carefully. Jesus said, anyone who divorces his wife except on the grounds of sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. What in the world's going on with this passage? Right? We won't be able to cover everything concerning this verse and this passage. There's just a lot to go into, but let's disconnect it from the modern abuses that this passage has been used for to see some of the intention behind it. Okay, so the modern day family is going to look really different than the ancient Near East family about 2,000 years ago on a different continent, right? Marriages were often prearranged by fathers when the kids were very young. And it was often a way of uniting two families together for the purpose of business. Very romantic. Let's make a movie about that, right? Now, a young girl around the age of 13 to 15 would be traded like a sports card by her father for what's called a bride price or a dowry. And this could have been livestock or coins or something along those lines. Grains, something that the family needed or had in stock, right? So I'm sure there's other ways of doing this back in the day, but the modern day giving away the bride, who gives this bride to this man in marriage, is actually based on this. Women were treated as property exchanges between men, fathers and grooms. And the groom would start construction back in the day, ancient Near East. The groom would start construction on the family house for a whole wing that would be for his family. And all of the sons of the father would have rooms on the house, oftentimes sharing a common courtyard and kitchen. Right, and then the groom would tell the bride that he's going to prepare a place for her and then would come back when the place was all ready. So the bride had to remain vigilant for his return and then when the room was finished, he would come. And there'd be his whole big welcoming party with trumpets and everything. He would head over to the bride's house, announce himself with the trumpets, and then there'd be this whole week-long party of eating and drinking and dancing. So you can see a lot of Christ's images was steeped in that whole family tradition. So the husband, after marriage and the week-long party, would then take up the family trade, fishing, masonry, leatherworking, or whatever, to provide for his family. He would take up the family trade. Now, if the husband died or decided he did not want his wife any longer, then it put the woman in societal danger of poverty, while the husband can just go find a new spouse of his choice. Now, the wife who had been divorced probably was not going to have as many options out there as the man would. Their women were not empowered to provide for themselves and their own safety in this culture. It was highly patriarchal. So Jesus' comments about divorce here are not about how God hates when we break up a family structure of two parents with 2.5 kids, a dog, and a house with a picket fence. Right? Our families look way different. And then if this does happen to you and you're a Christian, then you're demoted to an inferior status as a Christian, and there's a line drawn, and you're not allowed to be an elder, you're not allowed to be a teacher, you're not allowed to whatever, right? Which is how this passage has been applied in the past. This passage actually has more to do with the injustice of a patriarchal practice upon women in general being seen as objects with little value, to be used and then tossed away. Jesus is saying here, his sayings here have more to do with justice for the poor. Our views on this scripture should reflect that. This passage is about the abuse of power and the effects it has on the disempowered and the disenchanted. And it just so happens that it happens to be in an ancient Near East family structure that this was exercised. So while modern Christians have championed the modern family with the best of intentions, it's been built around this idealistic picture of a 1950s Donna Reed fantasy that left little room for women's empowerment as human beings in a world that was built for the advancement of men. So it is a wonder that modern Christians have been far behind the empowerment of women advancements. But this was Christ's intention here. Anywhere else we want to take this passage has to be built upon that idea, the empowerment of women within a patriarchal society and structure. Anything else is just not what Jesus was talking about. So the empowerment of women within a patriarchal society where men ruled families without any accountability and with full power to do as they please without consequence is being called into question here.